Okay, so we're here to talk about self-doubt as part of our Burnout series. And today I'm joined by Lisa Brander from OSA. She is their other director. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me to have a chat about this today.
You're welcome. So we're going to delve straight into the reasons why we start to think so negatively and just why we have these doubts and these lack of beliefs in ourselves.
Yeah,
And so I think one of the things is parenting approaches. So when we're young and impressionable, the messages, intentionally or not, that have been given to us by our parents.
yeah,
So somehow, sometimes we can get the message that we're not good enough, or we can have very protective parents that then give us the underlying message that you can't possibly do that. And we internalize that, we grow up with those attitudes. And also the media can have an effect as well. And
yeah,
and I think the way the media promotes how we should look can also have an impact on how we feel and how we appraise ourselves. So
yeah.
has that ever had an impact on you?
Definitely. I think whether it was myself that used to do it, I remember having comparisons a lot when I was a child. I remember being compared a lot to my sister in many different ways in terms of looks, academically, not just by parents, but by friends, family, teachers. I think everyone used to be like, "Oh, are you really Claire's sister?" Because I didn't feel as academic, I didn't feel as pretty, I wasn't as tiny as her, and I think a lot of my self doubts. I don't think that necessarily ever came from Claire herself, but in my mind, it was just always there from a very young age. And that definitely has played a massive part in how I talk to myself and the way in which and the way it's led to other areas, I guess, as well, not just on looks and academic, in all areas. How I spoke to myself then and how it made me feel about myself had a massive impact. And actually, I'm really grateful that there was no social media when we were kids, because I think with those little things that I struggle with now would have been massively magnified had there have been social media as well.
Yeah, and it absolutely is for young people now. Suicide
Yeah,
rates in teenage girls are going through the roof. It's
yeah,
absolutely terrifying, and and this is the cause of it. These negative thoughts
yeah.
that become a negative monologue. Like you said, they're not just thoughts. We are talking to ourselves about
Yeah.
ourselves, and that can be really powerful and really, really damaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the things that I say to myself on a daily basis about the way I look, for example, I would never dream in a million years of speaking to anyone else the way I speak to myself. I wouldn't even speak to someone I didn't like the way I speak to myself. So why do we do it? Why do I keep doing that to myself? And what impact? Because it doesn't achieve anything, and it doesn't make me stop my behaviors at all. It has the reverse effect on what I would hope that it would do, is rather than stopping me in my tracks and thinking, oh no, I'll sort myself out, or I'll be a better person for it. It doesn't have that effect. It makes the situation worse and just escalates it.
Yeah, and it's not conscious, this monologue, is it? we're not
No.
we're not intentionally talking to ourselves in such a negative way and saying that we're failures or we're losers or we're incapable or this isn't going to work, we can't do that. It's completely subconscious, because like even talking about it, we can smile about it, because it's strange that we talk to ourselves in this way, or that we have that internal monologue, because we wouldn't consciously do that to ourselves. We wouldn't dream of
No.
doing it to anyone else, but we wouldn't do it to ourselves either.
No, absolutely. It's just things that are there without even realizing that that's what's going on, I guess. And before you realize what you're saying to yourself, it's already too late, because it's already out there.
Yeah, and I can really relate to that, to myself as well. Certainly around not being academic. That's been a really big thing for me. I didn't do well at school. I was bullied throughout senior school, and that had a really detrimental effect on my appraisal of my abilities, and it certainly led to self-doubt. And right at a time when I was in my teens, and my attachment styles were changing like all teenagers do, to listening to what their peers have to say, and being concerned with what their peers thought. Well, a lot of my peers weren't happy with me, and weren't friendly or compassionate towards me, and so that had a big impact on me. And I didn't do well at school, and someone banterously in adult life said to me that I could spell fudge with my GCSEs, and I stopped for a beat and said, actually I can. Yes, you're right.
Oh, bless you. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is I think self-doubt as well comes from a massive area of who you're surrounding yourself with. I think those people that you're surrounding yourself and you're getting that reassurance from, if you don't have that within that circle, that can have a massively negative approach to how you're talking to yourself and the outcomes that then leads to. I mean, you are a registered mental health nurse, you run a company, and yet for all those years you thought you weren't academic.
Yeah, and that was a concrete belief. That wasn't a subconscious thing running in the back of my mind. I completely believed that until I eventually went to do my nurse training, and because it was in an area that I was passionate about and interested in, I absolutely excelled, to the point that they invited me to do a degree, and I graduated with a first-class degree with honours.
Which is unbelievable. And I bet even then, even though you achieved all that, I bet at some of those stages you thought, oh, I just managed to get lucky with the questions, or with what. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's that self-doubt that was in you so much that even then, when you realise actually the things that I can achieve, you're still almost coming up with the excuses as to why you've managed to achieve it, because it can't possibly be because you're actually academic. Yeah,
definitely. And it's called cognitive filtering.
Right.
That you have a belief, and so when things happen that sit well with this belief, so I'm not academic, I fail my GCSEs, well, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But when I'm not academic and I get a first-class degree with honours, well, I'm not that academic because the course had a lot of hands-on elements to it. There were a lot of practice placements. It was only 50-50, like half hands-on and half academic, and so I'm still not overly academic, and I make those excuses, to the point that the next time I wanted to go to university to do a postgraduate certificate in education, happened to be Bristol University that was running the course that was specifically to teach healthcare professionals. Perfect fit for me, but unfortunately it's a Russell Group university, so it was a very reputable university. And even after having had that experience at my first university and doing so well, and having all the experience of teaching since, I literally applied to that university just for a laugh, to see if they'd take me. I did not believe that I would get through the door, let alone pass the qualification. And I still remember.
Sorry, Jen. So when you did get through the door and you did pass, does that eliminate any of your self-doubt?
I'd love to say yes. Yes, I have no more self-doubt anymore. It's fabulous. Like, you can be just like me. but no, it certainly helps. It certainly helps allay my self-doubt in that area. Okay. Like, I can no longer say that I'm not academic, because I have enough evidence to allay my doubt in that area. But sadly, my mind just finds another area for me to doubt myself in. So now I'm not a businesswoman. I don't have any business qualifications. So how can I possibly run a business? And so the business development side of things is really difficult, even though I can design and prepare bespoke courses, and I can deliver them to a really high standard. But then I find the business element of it, my self-doubt creeps in, and I go to do some marketing, and well, I'm not an expert in marketing, so what am I doing? And you know, there's our lives are so complex nowadays. I think there's always something that we can latch onto that we're not good at or we're not confident in, and before we know it, we're telling ourselves that we can't do it, we won't do it, we shouldn't even try. What's the point? And so it's
isn't it, of sort of like saying to yourself that you're here by accident. You're like, actually, how you got to where you are is just a fluke, and you're just lucky, and it was just right place at the right time as to how you've ended up where you have. Nothing to do with your hard work or your ability or the fact that you're personable or that you're just actually really good at what you do. We can't say that to ourselves, can we?
No, it's a lot harder. It's much easier to fall into those traps and have that imposter syndrome where the door hits you on the way in rather than on the way out, and you find your excuses not to do things.
Yeah,
there are so many traps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because when you failed at something once, or it's easier to almost come up with a string of excuses as to not even bother trying, because it's just going to result in failure anyway, because that's what you tell yourself it's ultimately going to end up in. So I use it as a self-preservation thing, because I think, well, I'm going to fail and it's not going to work out, so I might as well stop it now, so that when I fail, it's not as bad failing now than it would be further down the line. And it's why every diet I've ever started, I end up putting it back on. I think, well, obviously I will, because I can't stick to anything and I can't achieve it.
Yeah, it's so easily done. And those excuses to stay in your comfort zone, because ultimately to face your self-doubt is to face your fears and to tackle them head on, and that is going to push you out of your comfort zone. And we'll do anything to stay in our comfort zone sometimes. It's just so much easier, isn't it? And like you said, if you've had past failures, they're going to play on your mind, and they are going to be more significant than your successes because of your cognitive filtering, and because your failures make sense, because that's what you do, isn't it? You fail, and that's, you're not capable and you're not going to achieve, and you're not good enough, you can't do that. Those failures feed into those beliefs and they strengthen those beliefs, whereas your successes are easily washed away with, well, that was a fluke, or anyone that, and it's very, very easy to discount them. But those failures are much more powerful in your mind, especially when you're going down that negative rabbit hole. And there are oh, go on.
Sorry, no, I was just agreeing.
So there's just so many pitfalls that people can fall into, and so that hesitation's a really common one. Hesitating because they're uncertain about what it is they want, and they don't have those specifics in mind, and they'll just wait until they know what they want to do, or they'll overthink it. They'll wait for it to be perfect before acting on it, and of course it never is perfect.
Absolutely. I think as well, in terms of facing those things head on and facing the way you talk to yourself head on, I think it can really take the power out of it. And trying to come up with whenever I have one negative thought, and trying to come up with 3 positives that I've actually done that will completely contradict that one negative thought. But it's so hard sometimes, isn't it, to listen to that positive side of it in order to try and turn that round.
Yeah, it is, but that's a really good practice if you can do that, especially if you write it down. that can be really helpful. And on those days where you really are stuck, you can have a sneaky look back and see what resonates with you. And now those words will be powerful.
Yeah, and having those achievements or any kind of achievements that you've done written down, like you've listed out a million achievements that you could that you've done in your life. Yet our brain automatically will focus on that one negative and replay it over and over again.
Yeah, it's really cruel, isn't it? It's so cruel what we do to each other, or what we do to ourselves.
Yeah, and like we were saying, we would never do that with anybody else. Like if one of my friends or my children achieved something, I'd never say to them, oh, but don't forget that time that you failed at that though. Like we'd never do it, yet we speak to ourselves like that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's trying to learn the tools to not do that I think will then enforce those positive outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. When I catch myself thinking negatively, I realize that that's not who I am as a person. I'm not a negative person, but I do have this self-doubt and I do have negative thoughts. And so now I've got to know myself. I've got to know that when I'm getting into that mindset, it's a downward spiral. So I have to do something to get out of it. And so I think about my environment. I'm an extrovert, and some people think that's defined by people who are really noisy, whereas an introvert would be someone really quiet. But really it's about where you get your energy from. And unfortunately I get my energy from other people, and I'm working from home. It's when I'm preparing my lessons I find that I can get into this negative mindset of, the lesson's not going to be good enough, I'm not going to meet the expectations of my clients, or whatever it is on that day. But I know that once I get into that mindset, I will be very unproductive, potentially for the rest of the day, if I let it go. And not only will I be unproductive, I'll be suffering. And so I invest a little bit of time in self-care, and I make sure that I either call a friend to get that energy back, get that positivity back. I'll take the dog for a walk. I'll go out for a drive and listen to some music. I will find some inspiration by getting out and doing something positive. And then I find that bit of time invested, I come back and I'm able to be much more productive again.
Yeah, I think those coping strategies that we have to learn for ourselves are so important, and who you're surrounding yourself with, that you are able to have a list of people that you can go to for different reasons, and that some will talk it through rationally, so you're not catastrophizing it. So you're not doing that, and that will see. One of my friends is brilliant at going, you're way overthinking this and you're making this so much bigger than it is. And she's really good at rationalizing everything to me and making sure that actually what you're saying, I mean, she'll come up with reasons as to why I'm thinking what I'm thinking is ridiculous. And I could never, even though I know those things, it's hearing it from someone else that will help me with that. And equally, that I've got another friend that will make me laugh so much, and that is also what I need to bring me out of those sort of like self-doubt thoughts.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think I'm so lucky to have those positive people around me as well that help me out with that. I really don't know where I'd be without them.
Yeah,
so it's really important.
I think it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a big circle. I just think whoever's in your circle needs to be important to how you speak to yourself.
Yeah, and it's really funny because usually with my friends as well, like they'll have their struggles as well, but usually it's sort of one at a time, so you can bounce off of each other and share the energy a bit.
I think when we at the beginning of the pandemic, my close friend and I struggled with certain elements of anxiety and panic and confusion, but we were always at different times to each other. So we were always able, one of us would always be talking the other one out of why you're not going to die immediately. And because one of us would always have that thought. I remember her ringing me up and being like, if I'm in hospital, you need to make sure that no one takes a picture of me and it's not in the press, because that's automatically where her mind would go. And she was like, don't let my husband let anyone take a photo of me when I'm being ventilated. And I was like, okay, I'll make that promise. But it just shows how irrational your thinking can get when the self-doubt kicks in.
Yeah.
That's immediate. And, you know, that's what it is, isn't it? It's that self-doubt again. Even during the pandemic, the self-doubt would creep in. And I thought immediately, if I get coronavirus, everyone's going to assume it's because I put on weight. Rather than anything else, it was that I immediately went to.
Funny, isn't it? The conclusions that our mind jumps to.
Yeah. And the way it can go into different areas. So although with self-doubt, I would say it's more within my personal life, but it's certainly niggled into other areas with work life, like you were saying, with your academic, with your uni work, and then now you're running a business, because obviously you proved that you were academic, but now it sort of like drifts into other areas.
Yeah.
So do you think it will always do that? Do you think it will always manifest itself somewhere?
Yeah, I suspect so. I think I'm just getting better and quicker at dealing with it, so that it has less of an impact on my working life, and less of an impact on what I can achieve with life as well. But yeah, I think we've just got to get savvy with how we deal with this, and nip bud when it does creep in.
Definitely. I think you're absolutely right. Nipping it in the bud is the thing that I find helps the most with it, in terms of just trying to stop those thoughts from taking over, and then stopping me doing what it is that I want to do by talking myself out of it.
Yeah, I think you just have to have that willful defiance and take a bit of opposite action, and just recognize, okay, I'm doing that thing again. Like not like I'm going to take that voice and I'm going to believe it, and I'm going to act on that voice. I think it's just having that override ability.
Yeah.
I found a quote earlier from Van Gogh, and it says, if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. And so I think that was what he was saying, like just take that opposite action and do it anyway, and that voice will stop. I mean, it might creep back a bit later, but it stops in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it needs to be, isn't it? Is in that moment. It's when that's there, it's putting that stop to it there and then.
Yeah, and I guess that's testament to the levels of success that people can have. Van Gogh had self-doubt. That is unbelievable. With what he achieved.
Someone ordinary does, if someone like him did.
Yeah, that's it. I've got one more quote as well, that a dream written down with a date becomes a goal broken down into steps becomes a plan, and a plan backed up by action becomes reality. And I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think for me it was always having something written down. I like writing things down because I think it's really important to have your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you setting those goals for yourself? What is the end achievement? And for me, I have to have it written down. So even if I'm having a self-doubt moment, I can then go back and look at why and what I'm trying to achieve and why I'm doing it. And just hopefully those things then click me back into thinking, you know, this is the long-term goal, and that's what I've got to think of. Even though I need to break it down into steps, there is a why I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's really strong. And I think it's so important and so powerful to break it down into steps, because when we're procrastinating and we're avoiding doing this task, it's not for the fun of it, it's because we're really intimidated by it. So to break it down into those more manageable chunks, and to set yourself a deadline to get that first step done, that's possible. It might not be possible to do the big daunting thing all in one day, but to just take the first little step, you can do that.
Because the end goal can look so overwhelming, can't it? That actually, if you're thinking it, you're setting yourself up to fail almost by trying to achieve the end goal straight away. It's not going to happen. So just taking one little step, you're still a step closer to today to your goal than you were by not achieving that sort of step.
Yeah.
And procrastination is one of my worst habits. If I think a job's too big, I just think I best not start it because I don't want to fail at it. I once bought a book on procrastination and I never actually got round to reading it. And that is it's so true. And I should have got round to reading it, but I procrastinated so much, and that's why I needed the book in the first place.
That's hilarious. Maybe it should have been an audiobook that you could have had on night instead.
I'm going to get it on audiobook. That's what I'll do.
That is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, by taking those simple steps to just think about what's going well, think about what's going right, think about what small steps you can take and when you want to achieve them by, and put that into action. Control your environment, make sure that you're around those positive people and that you're watching things that are positive. There's so much in the media that's negative at the moment, but we've got so much control over what we watch. We just have to choose to find the positive things and make that time for ourselves.
It's the same way as in we know how to eat healthy, and actually we need to be doing those things for our mind as well. We need to be feeding our mind full of healthy things rather than the negative things that are just going to have a really bad effect on it.
Yeah, that's so true. And we are going to get Helen Kimber back to do a nutrition talk with us as part of the Burnout series. So not only are we going to look at symptoms of burnout, but we're going to look at what perpetuates it, what causes it as well. So if there's anything that you guys want to raise as topics, then put them in the comments below and we will do our best to get round to you.
That's fantastic. I think it's such an important thing to raise, and to have those tools to be able to find that, like having Helen on the podcast will be phenomenal. Yeah,
I think so. I look forward to speaking with her again. And thank you so much, Lisa, for joining me today. And
thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and we'll do this again in a couple of weeks and we'll look at the next topic of burnout.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.